That's adaptive strategy. Innovation at the edges. Solutions emerging from the people closest to the problem. And kind of channeling the right to left book here, I love to work backwards. What we want to get to is what's called double loop learning, or a technical term from organizational psychology. Double loop learning means we didn't just learn a fact, we learned about ourselves in the process. We challenged some of our own assumptions. We tested our own process and found it wanting and want to change it. So if you're in digital delivery, for example, you didn't just deploy the code. You deployed the code, your users are using it, you were able to measure how your users used it. You learned something about the customers through that process. And you realize, well, you made some faulty assumptions at the beginning, and those faulty assumptions were because of other things that you could you might want to challenge. Your process for testing all of that took way too long, and there is a better way that you could organize yourself. That's kind of a sort of specific version of what double loop learning looks like. If you're doing really good retrospectives, you are challenging some of your core assumptions. You are challenging why we did it in this way. What were we thinking? And could we organize ourselves differently and achieve the result that we achieved more effectively? It's not just about process, it's about really fundamental things, but that's what double loop learning is about. We need some way of organizing our portfolio of experiments. My change ban game is actually quite a fun way of teaching that. So change ban is it's a simulation game based on Kanban and Lean Startup. If you've seen my feature ban game, it's a Lean Startup flavored version of feature ban. And we are teaching how you can think of your development process as asking different questions at each stage of the process. And you can think of one way of improving your process is thinking about how do we make sure that it asks the right questions at the right time? How do we make sure those questions really are asked? How do we make sure we really act on the answer to those questions? And how do we reflect on whether they're the right questions to ask? All that kind of stuff. That's change ban. And going into that, you have experiments. So you choose an outcome that you want to pursue. You come up with a number of ideas for how you might move towards that outcome. You frame that idea as a hypothesis. You develop that into an experiment that you then conduct. That's how that process works. And we borrow a bit from design thinking and various other places, ways to enliven that ideation process, how to come up with lots of ideas, how to prioritize ideas, how to mash ideas together, all this kind of thing. And we remind people also that those outcomes, they come from somewhere, they come from a strategy. We're not just having a retrospective and deciding to fix the first problem that we think of. When teams do that, if that's all they do, there's a good chance that they're optimizing for comfort. And there are much better things to optimize for. Comfort's important, but it's not the overall goal. Comfortable environments can be productive environments, but if that's what you're optimizing for, there's a good chance that actually you make it worse for some of your other stakeholders, for your customers, and even in the long run yourselves. Once the process starts to get inward looking, it starts to lose meaning, and that can be a problem. Another little thing, a little mnemonic, 2MBM, meaning before metric, measure before method. I never want to start with something like 10% more for 5% less. I don't want to start with more velocity. I don't want to start with higher net promoter score. I don't want to start with shorter lead time. If someone starts with one of those, I want to know why that's important, why that's meaningful. But those kind of metrics and lots of other metrics are actually important. If you work out how you're going to measure your success in achieving an outcome that can actually give you some solution ideas. So that's helpful. So that's measure before method. And chapter 4 of the book is based around that kind of pattern, making sure we understand why we want to pursue that outcome, coming up with some great ideas to help deliver that outcome. And part of the process of coming up with those ideas is thinking about how we would measure success. And it ties all really well with things like OKR and things like that, objectives and key results.